Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack huge amounts of research and distill it all down to the essentials you need to know.
And today, we are really digging into a big one.
We are. We're tracing the 25-year evolution of a major tech company, Akamai Technologies. It's really a story about change, about how leadership has to mature.
And, how a startup culture survives that transition to becoming a, nearly $4 billion global leader.
So our guide on this journey is Kate Prouty. She's the current CIO of Akamai.
Right, and she's the perfect person to track this because she joined the company way back in 1999, right at the beginning. She's been in leadership there for over 2 decades.
And we need to set the scale here. Akamai is, for many, basically the backbone of the internet. They're handling content, security, cloud computing, billions of times a day.
So this isn't just about, changing the snacks in the break room.
No.
This is a fundamental shift in the company's DNA,
Yeah.
all while managing this insane technical complexity.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the sources from Prouty's experience. How did they actually drive that change from the top down?
And I think more importantly, what parts of that sort of wild 1999 culture did they have to leave behind to survive? Because the big takeaway here is that change, well, it's not really optional.
Okay, so let's jump in that time capsule. Let's go back to 1999. What was that startup environment really like?
The sources, they paint a very specific picture. It's that high-octane, late .com era.
Right.
It's exhilarating. Frenetic energy, food deliveries, and my favorite detail, people literally on rollerblades in the office.
Rollerblades. I mean, that detail says so much, but that pace, it wasn't just for show, was it? There was a real technical need for that speed.
Oh, absolutely. They were building a global content delivery network from scratch. They had to be faster and louder than everyone. And that desperation, it translated directly into their culture.
So how did they define that?
Their motto, and this was literally printed on their walls, was the word obstreperous.
Obstreperous. I love that word. It's so noisy, defiant.
That was the whole point. It meant you were a disruptor. You were making noise, demanding change. The lines between jobs were, intentionally blurry. If you saw a problem, you just jumped in.
But this idea of healthy debate, it sounds like it often tipped over into something, well, less healthy.
It did. The sources are pretty clear that this culture, it was full of young, very academic people, and it created this environment of constant, intense confrontation.
So the goal wasn't collaboration.
Not really. The goal was often to be the smartest person in the room, to actively search for the mistakes in your colleagues' work.
Wow, that sounds incredibly stressful. A real pressure cooker.
It was. And they had a mantra for it, "You're behind."
Jeez.
Yeah. And the way they recognized success just solidified this whole individualistic, heroic thing. They had something called the Titans Award.
Okay, the Titans Award. Let me guess. It wasn't for the best team player?
Not at all. It was explicitly for the superstar Titan individual contributor, the one brilliant person whose Herculean solo effort saved the day.
So management, teamwork, that was all secondary to just these heroic solo acts.
Totally. And the expectation was complete and utter dedication. 15-plus hours a day in the office was normal. It was a badge of honor to sacrifice your personal life. People rarely even talked about their lives outside of work.
So that culture, as exciting as it sounds, it really had a shelf life. It was a ticking time bomb.
It was completely unsustainable. And that connects to the bigger picture, right? The mandate to evolve wasn't just about technology. It was about scaling their humanity. Akamai and Prouty basically grew up together.
And the sources show that the pressure for change often came from very personal places.
Yes, exactly. Prouty mentions that she was one of the very first people at Akamai to get pregnant back in those early days.
And if you look at how the company handled that then versus now, I mean, it just perfectly shows the massive gap they had to cross.
The contrast is, it's really dramatic. Back then, she was one of maybe 5 people in the mother's group.
Just 5.
Maternity leave was rigid, 12 weeks, just following the law, and 0 paternity leave. It was seen as a concession, not a benefit.
And now you fast forward, the company has over 12,000 employees. You just can't ask thousands of adults with kids and mortgages and real lives to operate like those 22-year-old rollerbladers.
The leadership finally realized it. The old culture was actively hurting their ability to keep the senior people they needed.
So their most precious asset, their people, was being worn down.
Exactly. The mindset had to shift from how much time can we get out of them to something more like how do we support their whole lives so they do better work.
It's that old saying, right? What got you here won't get you there.
It's so true. The heroic, chaotic stuff that built the company in the first place was never going to get them to that next stage as a mature, multi-billion-dollar organization.
Yeah. Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating to me. How does a company that literally rewarded people for being at their desks for 15 hours, how do they suddenly pivot to celebrating the idea that you might never need to be in the office?
It was a massive, massive undertaking. They went from that culture of mandatory face time to something they call flex space, which lets employees choose where they work best.
And it's not just a policy on paper.
No, it's real. Over 80% of their employees now work 4 or more days a week from home.
So my question is, the one every manager listening is probably thinking, how do you keep collaboration, productivity, all of it going when 80% of your team is remote, especially coming from where they came from?
Well, it took huge investment, both technical and managerial. Technically, their systems had to be flawless and cloud-ready, but the managerial shift was the big one.
You had to stop managing by sight.
Exactly. The focus had to move from inputs, did I see you sitting there, to outcomes. Trust had to become the default. Managers are trained to assess results, not your proximity to the office.
And you mentioned that Titan Award still exists, but it means something different. That must have required a total overhaul of how they review performance.
It did. The Titan is no longer the solo superstar.
So what is it now?
The new definition is all about collaborative impact, cross-functional success, mentorship. The performance metrics now explicitly reward you for sharing knowledge, for making the whole team succeed.
So being a brilliant jerk is no longer a viable career path there.
Not if you want to be a Titan, no. It's about channeling that old intellectual fire in a way that's, sustainable and positive. They didn't ask people to stop being disruptive.
They just ask them to be constructively disruptive.
Yes. They institutionalized that obstreperous spirit. They realized you can't rely on chaotic arguments for innovation when you're a giant global company. So they built formal structures, like their annual innovation challenge.
Tell me more about that. How does a formal structure like that create safety?
It gives a clear, safe path for anyone, no matter their role, to pitch an idea all the way up to the CEO for funding. It empowers people to challenge the status quo without the fear of, personal backlash if the idea doesn't work out.
So it's structured risk-taking. It creates room to fail. That whole idea of letting people burn down the couch, not the house.
Exactly. They made innovation a system, not something dependent on a random confrontation. The core values are still there, disruption, innovation, but now they're channeled through a system built on trust.
So let's bring this home for the listener. What does all this mean for someone who's in an organization right now that feels stuck in its own 1999 mindset?
Okay, key takeaway number 1. You don't have to wait for the CEO to have an epiphany. Prouty is really clear on this. You can be responsible for your own culture.
You can be the catalyst.
You can be the catalyst. If you see something that needs to evolve, speak up, even if it's just in your small corner of the company.
And that leads right into the second big idea. Control your immediate environment. Even if you can't change a whole company, you can change your team.
That micro-level change is so powerful. You can build trust, respect, and safety right where you are. Set clear expectations for teamwork. Hold your team accountable for eliminating those little microaggressions.
Make your bubble a safe place for people to bring their whole self to work, wherever they're working from.
Right. And for anyone in a leadership role, this all demands a huge shift in style. It's about being authentic, not just copying the old Titans.
Which brings us to the third takeaway. This is about leading by example, but also learning from bad examples.
Yes, Prouty talks about the power of the anti-mentor.
The anti-mentor, I think that's a brilliant concept. What does that actually look like?
Well, it's about deliberate observation. You watch the leader who is technically great, but relationally terrible, the one who micromanages their remote team or engages in that destructive personal kind of debate.
And you just take notes on what not to do?
You observe their actions and you consciously vow, that is a behavior I will never, ever repeat. You're not copying their success, you're learning from their failures.
It's such a powerful way to build your own authentic leadership style, instead of just mimicking the people who came before you.
Exactly. The end goal is authenticity. Don't pretend you're a 1999 Titan in today's world. It just won't work.
Because the world is constantly changing. The moment you get comfortable is the moment you fall behind.
And that is the final warning. If you like how things are now, great. But you have to constantly be challenging yourself and adapting. Because, as the old Akamai saying goes, if you're standing still,
You're going to be behind.
you're going to be behind.
What a journey. From a frenetic rollerblading startup to this flexible, team-focused global company, the lesson from Kate Prouty's 25 years is just so clear. Evolution is not optional. It is absolutely necessary for survival.
And if you're feeling challenged by change right now in your own work or life, we should leave you with Prouty's favorite quote on this. It really sums it all up.
What is it?
If it doesn't challenge you, then it won't change you.
Powerful. So don't just wait for change. Be the catalyst for it. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive. We'll see you next time.